When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 19. Her unwavering faith conquered the cancer and every other wall that came her way. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our truly daring guest, Nadia Ghulam Hussain. Nadia Ghulam Hussain is a survivor of cancer, resilience speaker, and a high school science and drama teacher. Her high-energy talks, drama-based workshops, and personal brand, Choose I Can, have been designed to inspire individuals to transform limiting beliefs into empowering opportunities. Driven by the principles that challenges are stepping stones to our greatness, and I Can is not the future, it's now, she has transformed her personal struggle into a powerful system of change. Her compelling story and strategies inspire others to unleash their infinite potential, choose I Can, and step into their greatness. Hello, Nadia. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Salima, thank you so very much for having me. Woo! I am so excited to be here. I feel incredibly blessed to have this opportunity. So thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for, giving me the space to share. I'm so pumped. I'm so excited. And I just want to start off by just throwing so much gratitude your way for what you do and just for having me on your show. Woo! I'm excited. It's going to be awesome. So excited.
I'm totally vibing with your energy there. That enthusiasm is just loving. It's loving and endearing altogether. What a delight to have you here today. This is going to be such a fascinating conversation. I just know it. So, Nadia, I'm thankful that you bring with you this willingness and openness to be here and your support today for taking a stance to help me break down barriers of mental stigma. I'm really appreciative for that.
Mental health is absolutely top priority for me. Just taking care of my mental health and
Right.
being in a space where I feel love and I feel safe. And that's really what this is all about, right? This
It
conversation
is.
where we can feel safe and we can be vulnerable and we can talk
Yes.
about these untold stories that, like you say, aren't always disclosed, but so needed to be heard.
Right. There's so much need to have them be heard and not for anyone to feel that there's reprimand or a reason to not tell, right? That the reason to not tell is greater than the reason to tell. I was telling someone the other day that it would be so nice if, when people talk, that people could talk about mental health the way they talk about, like, not to say that one is less than the other or more than the other, but if you end up having a knee surgery or you break a bone, that the way you talk about that you could
Yeah.
talk about mental health. And so I'm really striving for that. And it seems like you really very much understand the underlying message of this podcast. And it's truly beautiful that we can have this conversation today. And just your feedback on the mental beauty rethink is just really, it feels very satisfying, like to know that this is the vibe that is taking on with other people. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This mental beauty, we are beautiful. We are incredible. We are resilient. We are strong. And that's what that message to
Mm-hmm.
me, puts out into the universe. Mental beauty. Absolutely. Yes. Every single
Mm-hmm.
aspect of us is beautiful.
Yes.
And to be able to talk about
Right.
that in the same way we
Yes.
talk about other things really is what this is all about. Because we should be able to talk about it, because everything that comes with our experience is part of our experience. So
Yes,
yes, we
it's who
should be
we
able to
are.
talk about it, right? Like
Yeah.
this is,
It's our
we
whole
don't just have,
person.
exactly, we don't just have a physical self, an emotional self. We have also a mental self, a spiritual
Yeah.
self, and every
Yes.
single one of them is
Yeah.
as important as the other. So breaking
Yes.
down those barriers, absolutely. I'm about that life, and I'm ready to, have the conversation with you.
Yes. Amazing. So then, are you all set for our question party?
Yes, I am absolutely set. I feel honored, feel blessed. I'm ready to rock. I want to,
Amazing.
before you jump into the questions, I just want to
Mm-hmm.
say, and I always kind of put this out there that, whatever I share is one woman's journey, that it's
Right.
it's the journey that I've had, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sharing whatever I do share today from a place of deep respect, from a place of humility, from a place of feeling honored to be able to share it. And I
Mm-hmm.
want just to put out there that it's one woman's journey, and everybody's journey is going to be different.
You know what? Thank you so much for saying that, because that's really important. There's no cookie cutter story or template or script for how you tell your story or how it unravels for you, for anyone else.
Right.
So that's a really important message, and thank you for taking the time to say that. Thank you. All right, Nadia, question one.
Okay.
All right, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. What would it say?
I love it. And I think I'm going to have to go straight to the movement. And I think that the newspaper title would be How to Choose I Can and Step into Your Greatness.
How to choose I can and step into your greatness.
Absolutely. And for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
all about that how to. So, because of the experience I've had the ability to journey through, I
Mm-hmm.
have, come up with these ways, these metaphors, these ideas of
Mm-hmm.
how to choose I can and to step into our greatness. And I just want to, and I do through the Choose I Can movement that is so near and dear to me, really try to give people the tools to choose I
Mm-hmm.
can and step into
Mm-hmm.
their greatness, because I believe wholeheartedly that it awaits them. Our greatness absolutely awaits us.
I like that. The idea of, there are choices to make within ourselves, and
Absolutely.
believing in yourself and having faith in yourself and taking that step. So tell me, let's get right to that untold story. I want to hear about it. I want to hear about everything. Tell me all the who's, the what's, the when's, the where's. I want to know, so that we know where all your tools are coming from and what they're inspired by. I want to know. I want to hear about this.
So basically, I was born and raised in Vancouver, BC. So that's where I'm from. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to start right from the beginning. Growing up, I spent a lot of time observing my parents
Mm-hmm.
and looking at them with a sense of gratitude, because they came to Canada with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they worked so hard to give me and my sisters everything that we could even imagine. They
Right.
sacrificed so much to give us a better life.
Right.
Seeing my dad literally make something out of nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing my mom raise us, and the resiliency that both of them had, they were, both raising us, and they both sacrificed so much,
Right.
that I looked at them with so much gratitude, and I modeled their resiliency. I tried to model everything that they were doing. So this
Mm-hmm.
positivity that I have actually started from a young age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Looking at them with gratitude, being grateful for their sacrifices, praising the big G for everything that we had, from where we came from to where we were now. So that sense of gratitude and that sense of positivity, I already started to cultivate that. And in high
Right.
school, I continued that journey. So whatever I was going through, whatever difficulties, whatever hardships, I made sure that I stopped, reflected on what I was going through,
Right.
and I wrote about it. That was my outlet. I wrote about any challenges, any difficulties, and through my writing, I would integrate this positivity. So if I was going through a challenge, I'd write about it, and then I would integrate positivity by telling myself, you can do this. Don't give
Mm-hmm.
up. So this sense of, being your biggest fan and pumping yourself up and working through your own challenges,
Mm-hmm.
that's something I began when I was in high school.
Yeah.
That reflection,
Right.
that working through any challenges that I might have with a sense of positivity and hope,
Mm-hmm.
that's something I already started. So when I moved out to Ontario, went to McMaster University, that journey continued.
Mm-hmm.
Any hardship, any difficulty, I would write about it. I would reflect on it. I would continuously tell myself, you got this. You can do this. Whatever comes your way, you got this. And so after university, I moved back home to BC. And when I moved back home, that's when I was diagnosed with cancer.
And how old were you?
24. So it was as if my degree came with a diagnosis.
Right. My goodness.
And at that point in my life, I was ready to go. I was ready to rock. I was like, I
Right.
got this degree. I'm excited. Let's
Yeah.
attack the world.
Yes. The world is my oyster. And
Yeah,
then surprise.
exactly. And then, boom, like a brick to the face,
Yeah.
I get this diagnosis.
Right.
Now, I was sick for a long time. There was about 5 to 6 weeks where I just felt incredibly ill.
And this is before the diagnosis.
Right.
Okay. What was that like? Like, what did you experience when you say you were sick for 4 to 6 weeks? Like, what was showing up?
So my head felt like it was going to explode.
Really?
My chest was hurting. I was drenched in sweat nightly.
Mm-hmm.
And there was points where I couldn't get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt so sick. I was losing weight rapidly. I had dropped from about 110 pounds to 80 pounds.
Wow.
And I was walking in and out of clinics to figure out what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't getting any answers. I was being told it's the flu, it's a sinus infection, take these antibiotics, you're going to be okay.
Mm.
And I wasn't.
Right.
And finally, it was my mom
Mm-hmm.
who said, that's enough. We're going to go to the hospital
Yeah.
because you're not getting any answers. And maybe this is going to give us more information.
Right.
And so I went because it was clear I needed to go. I was like,
Right.
let's do it, Mom. Let's do it. I'm ready. So, I waited 6 hours in the emergency room that day.
Mm-hmm.
Had several tests performed, blood work, chest x-ray,
Everything.
urine test,
All kinds of stuff.
all kinds,
All the
ECG,
diagnostics.
yep, all those, yeah. And it was that day
Mm-hmm.
that I was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow. Wow.
And it was, again, just like a brick to the face,
Wow.
unfathomable disbelief and a shock.
Of course, it's a shock. I mean, we all know that maybe there's a time we're going to have some unexpected circumstance or curveball or diagnosis or illness, but we never actually think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't expect it to happen at age 24, and you certainly don't expect it to come as a graduation gift, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Exactly.
When you're ready to like venture out into the world and see the
Yeah.
world and be in the world without any limitation. Certainly, I can't imagine what that was like for you.
Yeah. And I think that
Must have been so scary.
there was fear. Absolutely. Initially, again, just a numbness
Mm.
and a shock. And,
Yeah.
I'm experiencing it, but also watching my family experience it, which was difficult.
Yeah, that's a different kind of turmoil altogether, right? Because they obviously want the best for you and love and care
Absolutely.
and trying to figure out how did this happen and
Mm-hmm.
the disbelief and
Exactly.
so many of the other thoughts that would have been in their mind, right?
Absolutely. Exactly. And, I can't, being a parent now myself, I can't imagine, what my siblings were going through, but mostly what my parents were going through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was difficult for me because I've always been that type of person that wants to make people feel better, but there was nothing I could do.
So Nadia, after you went through that process of shock and
Yeah.
digesting and
Mm-hmm.
processing, whoa, right? What
Yeah.
has just
Yeah.
happened? And going
Right.
through the numbness and the shock and decoding, okay, what my family is feeling and
Yep.
how they're presenting. What did you decide to do? You clearly talk about choices, right? So
Yes.
how did choices come up for you?
So, first, I want to say that what actually ended up happening was after the initial diagnosis, I had to spend a little bit more time in the hospital. And through this process of being in the hospital and getting further tests,
Right?
I continued to, be in this numb state. But
Mm,
then what happened was I went into some deep reflection. What I'd already done in my life and reflected and, paused.
take the
And so I went
challenge,
into some,
right? Did you do some writing while you were in the hospital too?
I did. I
Okay.
did. Yeah. Tons of writing through the entire journey. And so whatever ended up happening was I had to spend the next week in the hospital.
Hmm.
And this leads up to the choice I made. And in the hospital, I was undergoing even more tests, fine needle biopsies, open biopsies, bone marrow biopsies. The
Oh
tests
my
just kept
goodness.
coming.
Wow.
And in this entire experience, I have this sense of numbness, but I'm also in a deep reflection.
Hmm.
And it's all kind of going really fast. And then there was this moment.
Yes.
So I was in this deep reflection in the hospital, and then there was a woman who
Hmm.
was in the bed next to me. She was in her 70s, a sweet woman, and she's looking at me, going through all these tests and seeing my family come in and out. And then one evening, when her and I were by ourselves, she turned to me and she said, "Are you scared?"
Right.
The entire journey for me was many moments. So, in that moment, in that deep reflection, in that moment, I closed my eyes and I opened them again and I said to her, "No." And she
Hmm.
said, "Why? You are so young."
Right.
And I said, "Because I know God has more work for me to do here."
Impeccable.
Now, I talk about moments only because, Salima, there are so many moments in the journey. Moments of fear, yes.
Yes.
Moments of this faith. And, we talk about faith a little bit, and I'm sure it'll come up again,
Right.
of this faith that, no, there's a purpose for me.
Hmm.
There's more to my story here.
Right.
There's moments of disbelief, moments of gratitude, moments of awe, moments of frustration, moments of sadness, moments of elation.
Right.
And it was in that moment that I had this feeling overcome me that no, God has more work for me to do here. And then in that reflection, what came to my mind was the fact that I've cultivated all this positivity in my life, and I almost felt like God was asking me and telling me, Nadia, you talk a big talk,
Right.
but can you walk the walk? Life isn't always or only about facing the good times head on. What about the hard times?
Hmm.
Are you going to retreat or are you going to rise?
So you chose to rise, huh?
So that was the choice.
Right.
I ultimately had two choices. I
Hmm.
could let the diagnosis define and defeat my spirit,
Right.
or I could choose I can
Hmm.
and step into my greatness.
And that's where it all
And
started.
I chose the latter to take the pain and
Hmm.
transform it into powerful, positive purpose
Hmm.
that God had more work for me to do.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And there's another story of when it really solidified the choice.
Yeah.
And that story is 2 chemotherapy sessions in when my mom drove me home from treatment.
Okay.
I had just had chemotherapy. It was my second one. And this is the stamp
Hmm.
on the choice to take on the challenge.
Okay.
I started to cry after the chemotherapy. My mom's driving me home and I'm just bawling. I'm
Hmm.
crying and crying, and the tears would not stop. And, I could tell that her heart was breaking because I'm sure she didn't want to see her daughter cry like that.
And maybe she was fighting back her own tears too, right?
Absolutely. And she said, part of her I didn't think maybe didn't want to ask me because Maybe she was afraid of what I would say, but she did ask me. And she said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Mommy, I'm crying because I'm crying because I am so inspired,
Mm.
inspired of the strength that God knew I had."
Wow.
And again,
Mm-hmm.
praises.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe he would put me in a situation that I couldn't handle. And so the fact that he believed that I was strong enough to do this brought on those tears. That he believed in me
Yeah.
brought on those tears. And so it was in that moment, Salima, it was in that moment that I said, I'm going to make a choice. And I am deciding that this experience would be beautiful, that it would be a beautiful learning and growing opportunity. And that is exactly what it was
Right.
to me. I chose that story.
Right.
I chose that perspective. And it is our perspectives, I believe, and through this experience that determine our reality. It's not our circumstances, it's not our challenges.
Mm-hmm.
It's the stories we make up about our circumstances and our challenges.
Yeah, the narrative, right? The narrative that goes on. And in this moment, it seems like you were going to take on this journey, whatever this journey was filled with. You're like, I'm in.
Yeah.
If this
That I
is
can
the
grow
plan,
from
right?
it.
If Big G
Mm-hmm.
has this plan for me, then I'm
Yes,
in.
absolutely. And that's what it was. It was a total embrace.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, you know, I can learn from this. I can grow from this. And if you believe in me, then so do I.
Very inspirational.
The whole journey was built on a foundation of faith.
Right.
Another quote that I have is, build a foundation of faith so strong that no obstacle can knock you down.
Right.
And that was my faith for me.
And that's what you practiced, and that's what you focused on.
Yes. And one of the ways that I did it,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the ways that I continued the narrative of this is going to be beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
is I continued to ask myself one question every day. And that was, what's the blessing?
Mm-hmm. What's the blessing?
Yeah. Because I believe that our internal dialogues are our roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I asked myself, what's the blessing?
Mm-hmm.
My mind would go to the blessing because our mind is designed to find what we're looking for.
Right.
So the more I focused on the blessing, the better I felt. That is what allowed me to take on the positive perspectives. When I asked myself, what's the blessing? Because I could focus on what wasn't. So even just a small example, very small example is, he was taking this certain medication and the chemotherapy was not allowing me to sleep at night.
Right.
And in those sleepless nights, in that immense fatigue, I would ask myself, well, what's the blessing?
Right.
And the things that would come to mind
Mm-hmm.
is that at least I have a bed.
Right.
I have the support.
You found something.
Something.
Yeah.
And I hung on to those things.
Right.
And those are the things that created the beautiful journey.
Right.
Because the truth is that our perspectives will determine our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And our emotions will determine how we feel, and how
Yep.
we feel will determine what we do. And
Right.
what we do will determine our life.
Yeah.
So it's that constant seeking of the blessing
Right.
that really helped me to continue to see light.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about asking yourself this question and how it fires these different neurons, right, of getting you to think something different and what sort of emotion that produces and what else it tells you, it's very much connected to CBT, which stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. And
Yep.
sharing this with you, if you're not familiar, or at least for our listeners, is that this
Mm-hmm.
therapeutic model of treatment, it holds a very heavy evidence-based premise. And so very much what you're emphasizing about our dialogue, our thoughts, feeding into how we feel, this is all
Yes.
CBT as well. And it's about all the connections of our thought and our mood, our behavior. And it's about this idea that we might not be able to change
Yes.
the way we feel, but we can control our thoughts. And if we think differently, it will produce a different feeling, and therefore we can act or behave differently. And so the same thing that goes along with when we choose to do something different, even if we don't feel like it, when we choose
Yep.
to do it, it can also produce a different mood or emotion. And this will activate a different type of thought pattern. So So if someone was to say something like, oh my goodness, this is going to kill me, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to produce a feeling of like defeat and fear and sadness and a slew of other emotions. And that will
Yes.
influence what we choose or don't choose to do in terms of our actions, right?
Absolutely.
And so I really admire when you say, I looked at whatever was going on and I asked myself this question. I put this thought in my mind and planted the seed of what's the blessing.
Absolutely.
So when you do that, it really gets you to focus on thoughts that are trickling. It's like a little brainstorm,
Domino
right?
effect.
And it's a brainstorm, like what's the blessing? So you have little things firing.
Absolutely.
And it is going to influence your mood. And it's going to influence what you do. And
yes,
it's so great to see how an internal dialogue and your story and your journey having so much connection with this model.
Yeah. And, I had the good luck and fortune to actually study neuroscience in university.
Mm-hmm.
So I am familiar with the model. And, just in this conversation, Salim, I actually didn't realize, how connected it really is.
Right.
And I have also I've had some training with the Canadian Mental Health Association. I'm a facilitator for the Live Life to the Full program for
Yes.
youth.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
excellent.
And it's interesting now in this conversation as I reflect back on my life and the
Right.
journey
Yeah.
that I was already putting all these things into play even before
Way
I had
before.
learned them.
Yeah. So what happened is these were already mastered skills. So this was in your mastery toolkit. So you had these in your back pocket.
And what you said about choosing our thoughts, one of the things, I always say is that we can't always control our circumstances, but we can
No.
always choose our perspective.
Yes. Yes, we
Yes,
can.
yes,
Right.
right? Choose I can. That's
Mm-hmm.
what it is. That's
Mm-hmm.
what choose I can
Mm-hmm.
is choosing the
Yeah.
perspective that we can. It's a growth mindset, right? It's that idea that no, I can learn from this and I can grow from this and I can do this. That,
Mm-hmm.
we have this belief that we are resilient by nature.
Mm-hmm.
Our spirit was born with the ability to rise over and over
Mm-hmm.
and over again.
Mm-hmm.
We have this innate greatness. That's part of who we are.
Right.
Every experience will come. That's part of being human.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is resiliency is in our
I
soul.
love it. I like how you coined that.
There's an immense gratitude on my end for, him allowing me to journey through the cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of my, finite human journey, if God asked me, if there's anything that you would change,
Mm-hmm.
like if I would take the cancer away,
Mm-hmm.
I would say no.
It was your journey.
It was my journey and it allowed me to learn and it allowed me to grow. So I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many moments, Salima, of learning, so many moments of growth,
Right.
so many tears,
Oh, I can't imagine.
so many smiles,
Right.
so much hope.
Right.
There was the hair loss journey,
Mm-hmm.
there was the scars, there was the feelings of being judged, being felt sorry for.
Mm-hmm.
There was so many moments of growth and learning that required reflection, that required the question, what's the blessing?
What's the blessing? Can I use that in the therapy room? Would you be okay if I could introduce your special question of what's the blessing? Can I borrow it?
Of course you may. And that, that's anybody's question.
I know.
It's not my question. That question belongs to everybody. And it is my sincerest hope
Mm-hmm.
that even if one person starts asking themselves, what's the blessing?
Yeah.
Then I'm continuing to do the work that God was keeping me here to do.
It's a victory.
That's right. We are so powerful.
Yeah.
We are so powerful. I can't say it enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our power. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's not so much about bad things are not going to happen and be positive through everything. It's not about that for me.
Yeah.
It's no, things will come.
Yeah. We may not be able to control the timing,
Right.
or the persons or the places,
Right.
but the things that are meant to show up will show up.
Absolutely.
And we may not be able to control who or when or how, but if we do our part,
Yeah.
it does happen.
Absolutely. Because in life, there's going to be the sun, there's going to be the rain, there's going to be the storm, there's going to be the hail, there's going to be the
Mm-hmm.
rainbows. All of it is going to
Yes.
come. That is, we are meant to go through that. But it's not, without that rain, we can't
Mm-hmm.
get the flowers.
Of course.
We
Yeah.
need all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. The flowers don't come, the rainbows don't come
Yep.
if there's no rain.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it's that idea too for me, it's the compassion towards yourself.
Absolutely.
It's that,
100%.
yeah, it's that self-love. Whatever you might
Yes.
be going through, self-love is really, really, really big.
Oh my goodness. It's an
It's
antidote to everything, like
oh,
so
100%.
much.
Mm-hmm. It's really, really big because things are gonna happen,
Yeah.
but be kind to yourself.
And situations are imperfect, and people are imperfect, and we ourselves
Absolutely.
are imperfect. And
100%.
so, if we can just show kindness to ourselves,
Yes.
what a difference it makes on what we end up fixating on, or dwelling on, or spending all our time ruminating, and
Absolutely.
what we could do differently during that time, right?
Yes. And in all of it, we can say, what's the blessing? It's such a simple
Yes,
question,
I
like we
love the
talked about. It's,
question. Yes.
WTB, what's the blessing?
Yeah, I love it. WTP.
Right?
That's even best. That's the greatest. That's great.
I say the challenges are stepping stones to our greatness.
Mhm.
What we're going through today is actually preparing us for the greatness of tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, we become better and better each day.
Absolutely.
I totally feel so much resonance with what you're saying. There's so much there that that's important, like the messaging that you have here, and talking about it from the gift perspective is a really nice way to put it.
Yeah. I always think to myself that I can focus on the burden
Mhm.
or the blessing,
Mhm.
the obstacle or the opportunity, the grief or the gift. It is really my choice what I focus on, and it will determine how I feel, and it will determine what I do, and
Absolutely.
it will determine my relationships with myself and others.
Right. So Nadia,
Yes.
I am curious. So we were talking about how when people come to see me in therapy, I'm going to encourage them to ask themselves this question.
Amazing.
Um,
Thank you for
because
integrating
people,
that.
yeah, I'm going to. We may or may not have chatted about this before,
Okay.
maybe in a private conversation, maybe. But people when they come to see me, they're usually in one of three places,
Okay.
and some are getting started, some are in the middle, and some are looking back in terms of a particular place. Sometimes people are maybe in between, but they're still closer to one than another. And so I'm
Mhm.
curious. I never assume. So what part of the journey would you say that you're in? Would you say that you're getting started in the middle or looking back?
Such a great question. And I would have to say in the middle because my journey is not going to be over until I take my last physical breath.
Until you take your last physical breath. So what makes it stay in the middle?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm human and I'm just going to continue to journey. So, positivity is a practice. It's
Mhm.
a daily internal
Mhm.
dialogue. I'm
Mhm.
always catching perspectives and changing them. I'm always asking myself, what's the blessing?
Mhm.
I work through, perspectives that aren't serving me all the time.
Mhm.
Being human for me, again, my perspective is this constant journeying, this constant internal dialogue, this deliberate, conscious mindfulness of what's happening and awareness of what's happening in my mind. And I'm
Mhm.
always journeying through perspectives, through emotions. Like the roller coaster of life is not going to stop. There's a saying that struggle is the meaning of life.
Right.
And I never understood it.
Right.
I never did. I was like, struggle, really? That?
Uh-huh.
That's the meaning of life?
Right.
Really? And
But it's to work hard.
yeah, and then I actually realized through
Yeah.
reflection was that, well, if we're not struggling, then we're not learning. And if we're not learning, then we're not growing. And if we're not growing, then we're not living. Because what happens when a flower stops growing? It's no longer. What happens when a heartbeat flatlines? It's no longer. The ups and downs is part of our journey, it's continuous.
Right.
And so it'll always be in the middle. And I always, tell people that look at me and say, I wish I had your positivity. And I say, you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can. This is for everybody for the taking. It's a perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I wasn't born like this. It's work. It's a practice. I think of optimism, Salima, like an art. If you want to be a
Of
really
course.
good piano player, you gotta practice. If you want to be a really good basketball player, you gotta practice. Painter, you gotta practice. And for me,
Right.
optimism is the same thing. It's
It
an
is.
art.
So you've told us quite a bit about, how your journey began, even pre-diagnosis. We've talked
Yeah.
about like some things that you've been really impacted by, some of the difficulties along the way, as well
Yeah.
as the shifts and changes in your narrative and the process for you to have been able to attain that narrative and maintain it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of gratitude along the way, a lot of pain along the way. I've been
Yep.
hearing all of the themes as they've emerged. I'm curious, though, how your untold story impacted your mental health during the journey. I know that you were able to reframe a lot
Yep.
and you were able to look at the positive. I'm
Yeah.
just curious the things that you had to reframe. There must have been some experiences that you had
Yeah.
that were really affecting you. I know you mentioned a little bit about hair loss and
Yep.
that being a journey of its own, as
Mm-hmm.
well as going through really big moments of fear. Like, even though you might not have been scared in some moments, there might have been some moments that there was some initial fear. Can you say a little
Absolutely.
bit more about that?
Love to. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so a couple journeys. I can, share snapshots of them. So the first real difficult journey for me was the open biopsy.
Mm.
It was one of the initial tests for the diagnosis and to find out what type of cancer it was.
So this was like right at the beginning.
Yes, right at the beginning, exactly. And I
Hmm.
really struggled with the open biopsy because it caused me to be under, right, general anesthesia.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
all of a sudden, I have this doctor I don't know, no relationship with. It's going to be at my throat with a knife,
Oh my goodness.
right, to cut right by my jugular.
Hmm.
Take out some samples of the cell because it was right at the base of my neck. And I really,
Hmm.
really struggled with that. And, we talked a little bit about moments. So, absolutely, a lot of reframing, a lot of moments, right? The moments, of gratitude, the moments of fear, the moments of worry. And in this moment, there was fear
Hmm.
because I thought to myself, how can I trust this person I don't even know? And all of a sudden, my life is no longer in my hands. And I really did not want to go for this open biopsy.
Hmm.
I knew in the end it was going to be a positive result because we would get more information, but I didn't want to be under not knowing what's happening, having no control whatsoever.
Right.
And the reframing for that one happened with a trigger. And I feel like there's always a trigger that will prompt a reframing. And so I said to my now husband at the time, I said, I remember being in the car with him, I think the day before. I said, I really
Hmm.
don't want to do this. And
Hmm.
I said, my life is not going to be during the surgery in my hands.
Hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, it never was. And he pointed up.
Hmm.
And that was it. That trigger, that shift, that perspective, to help me change that perspective with that statement.
Wow, so powerful. He said three words to you.
Yeah, it never was. And once that statement was made, I had no problem with going in for the surgery because
Mm.
I realized that that's the truth.
Right.
My life is not in my hands. It's
Hmm.
in the big G's. Always has been, always will be. And then I was able to laugh about it and joke with the doctors and, just smile. And even when I got out of the surgery, I grabbed the nurse's hand, I popped up, I looked for the doctor, we made eye contact, and I said, thank you so much.
Wow. You had strength.
The reason I think the strength was there it was because I knew that he, the big G, was
Hmm.
with me the entire time.
Yeah.
Like he didn't
Yeah.
leave my side, hand on my shoulder.
I mean, it wasn't a one-way street. I mean, you have this unwavering faith, unwavering faith.
I just build a foundation of faith so strong that no
Mhm.
obstacle can knock you down. I just have it clenched so tightly in my hand because it's pulled me through. Yes, the cancer, everything, that I've gone through, this rope has pulled me through, and I'm just not willing to let go.
Right.
And the hair loss journey was losing it was so huge for me, Salima. And it's because
Right.
growing up, I was very, very much attached to my hair. It was
Mhm.
actually a defining factor to my being.
Mhm.
It was kept long all the time, in French braids by my mom, baby
Mhm.
breaths. Like it was
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
such a big part of me.
Mhm.
Long curls, just, part of who I was. Like, oh, there's Nadia with the long
Mhm.
curly hair.
Mhm.
And when it started to fall out and I saw it drenched all over the pillow and the bald spots beginning to form,
Right.
that was so hard.
Right.
When
Yeah.
my eyes swell now, just remembering, recollecting that,
Mhm.
because it was so linked to my identity.
Right.
And so in the moment, again, those moments, and then it required the pause, and it required the reframing, and it required the conversations. That's another thing. It's the
Mhm.
conversations we have with others that
Mhm.
might trigger a perspective shift. And the conversation, again, that triggered the perspective shift was with my now husband when I said to him, I'm sorry. And he said, Why? Why are you apologizing? And I said, I'm sorry because you have to be with somebody that's losing their hair. And he said to me, You are so beautiful. You don't need that wig and
Right.
hair. Hair is only
Mhm.
an accessory. And that conversation, that trigger, that support, that undying love
Mhm.
caused a perspective shift because I said to myself, you know what?
Mhm.
I don't need this wig. And hair does
Right.
not define me. And in fact,
Right.
I'm going to now ask myself, what's the blessing? And that's going to cause the shift. So I said to myself, okay, Nadia, what's the blessing? And that's
Right.
when I realized that it's not cancer that causes hair loss. It's the cure for cancer that made me lose my hair. So baldness is a sign
Yeah.
of hope and well-being. And I'm going to be gosh darn proud of this bald head, because if it
Right.
wasn't for this bald head, this lady, me, would
Yes.
not be here. There would be no
Yeah.
journey.
And there's this other part of your perspective that I'm hearing is also like when you start to come to terms and accept yourself, your whole self, you can actually see how others also accept you and your whole self.
Yeah.
And that people don't accept you based on what you have defined are factors to your being.
Yeah.
That when people meet you and connect with you and build relationships with you, they're connecting with the whole you.
Yeah. And it's incredible because the conversations, like the scar on the neck, is the same thing. After the biopsy, the scar was so huge. And I said to my now husband, it's the conversation again. I said, I'm sorry that you have to be, with somebody that's going through this and has this scar. And what he said to me was, what scar? That's just another beauty mark. And
Mm,
again,
beauty mark. I love it.
yeah, and then with that statement, with that love, with that support, I said to myself, what's the blessing? These scars are beauty marks. These scars, you know what? They're badges. They're badges of my
Oh,
strength and my
right.
courage. This is a badge
Uh-huh.
of my strength and my courage. So with these trigger conversations and then
Mhm.
the deliberate perspective shift,
Mhm.
the internal dialogue,
Right.
that's where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those moments came with reflection, came with sitting in the emotion, feeling the sadness, feeling that fear,
Mhm.
having the conversations, being compassionate. Because,
Mhm.
Rumi, it was Rumi that talks about us being a guest house.
Mhm.
Any emotion that comes, whether it's fear, anger, frustration, don't push them away.
Yeah.
Welcome them in with compassion. Sit down with them,
Mhm.
have that conversation. What's the message?
Mhm.
Feel it. It's not about, for me, positivity is not about just being positive and thinking everything's going to be, okay all the time. No, it's about accepting that it isn't
Mhm.
and then journeying through it and asking yourself, what's the blessing? And learning from it and growing
Yeah,
from it.
it's this acknowledgement of, okay, so let me acknowledge
Yeah.
this is what's going on,
Yes.
and now that I'm aware of
Yes.
what I'm going through, what's in front of me, what I'm facing, how am I moving through this?
That's right.
What are the things that I need to do? What are the steps that I need to take to move through this,
Absolutely.
even in the darkness of the tunnel?
That's right.
It's the movement.
That's right. Because it's that what's the blessing will allow you to see the light.
The blessing will allow you to see the light, or at least let you know that the light is there,
That's right.
that you'll be able to see it soon.
Hmm.
So I think this is a really good segue for us, with all of the lessons and teachings and perspective that you're sharing right now, for you to maybe share what's your key message to the listeners of our show.
Yeah, there's so many. It's really wrapped up in a single statement, but it really boils down to, not underestimating your personal power. That you are
Mm-hmm.
born with so much greatness, so much resilience, so much brilliance. It's that recognizing the power of positive perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And the message, it boils down to that single statement, and it's choose I can.
Choose I
Your
can.
greatness awaits.
Yeah. That there is light, there is a spark.
Absolutely. Just, you know, choose you. Choose to believe in yourself, that you can overcome anything that you're going through. It's your
Mm-hmm.
nature to be able to rise
Yeah.
over and over and over again. You are whole. You are complete.
Right. It's beautiful. And so I'm also curious about, in terms of things that have been inspirational for you, something that was game changer, that was, or maybe still is close to you, that reflects your untold story. So I know you are like this beautiful quote creator, but I'm wondering at the time if there was an inspirational quote or a book or something that was really speaking to you, that was that game changing piece that was also part of your journey.
There is absolutely a quote
Okay.
that has been so powerful in my life. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot remember the first time I have heard it or I heard it, but it has never left my psyche.
Mm-hmm.
It's once again Rumi.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, this quote is just something else. Okay, so here it is. The quote is, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. You are the entire ocean in a drop.
Mm.
And that just speaks so loudly.
Oh yeah, it speaks volumes, and I am a Rumi fan also, so
Yeah.
I forgot about this quote.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
I've read it before many
Yeah.
times,
This
many of
quote.
the poetries and the readings, and I recall this one. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. It
Oh
just,
my
it's
goodness.
so dear to me. I actually have a tattoo of a drop
Oh, that's
to
wonderful.
remind me of that every single day. That, listen,
Yeah.
you are the entire ocean in a
Mhm.
drop. An ocean is limitless,
Mhm.
boundless,
Mhm.
all powerful. Everything you
Mhm.
need is in here.
Mhm. You really anchored the quote, especially when you were able to get that tattoo.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very creative. So, Nadia, what is a cause or an organization that has been impactful to you on your journey that you want to give a shout out to? Anyone
Y-
in particular?
Yeah, there's so many, but I think, one that really stands out is the Canadian Cancer Society.
Mhm.
All institutions and all organizations that, give their time to cancer research and helping people through this journey,
Mhm.
I'm in so much gratitude too, because if it wasn't for people who cared,
Right.
I might not be here today. Years
Absolutely.
ago, the cancer I had was a death sentence.
Right.
And through the research and care of individuals, I'm still here. And there's so many cancer causes.
Mhm.
One of them that really helped through my journey was the Canadian Cancer Society.
Yep. Let's give a shout out to the
Yeah.
Canadian Cancer Society.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I connected with them often, and
Yes.
just, the supports, and I made, some really, really good friends. And again, just, looking at the Canadian Cancer Society itself, it's just a cause that's dedicated itself to, helping
Right.
people
Yeah.
continue to
They're
live.
very dedicated. It's lovely.
Yeah.
It's really, really beautiful. So, Nadia, how can people connect with you? How are you findable? You've shared a really personal story, and I'm certain that there might be one, perhaps many people that might want to reach out to you. How are you findable?
Oh my goodness! Choose I can. Woo! Choose I can. Choose I can. Choose I can. At Choose I Can Instagram, Facebook.com/Choose I Can, LinkedIn Choose I Can, Twitter Choose I Can, YouTube Choose I Can. Just
Okay.
Choose I Can. And that's where you're gonna find me working on my dream. And I'd love to learn about other people's dreams and share the journey, because we're all journeying. But yeah, just so happy to connect with people and learn about their dreams
Mm,
and their vision. And I love seeing people
yeah.
choose I can, and just be in conversation. It's so great. But yeah, if anybody's looking for me, they can 100% find me at Choose I Can.
All right. Choose I Can. Here we are. Okay. I love it. So you're everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn,
Yeah.
Twitter, YouTube,
Yes.
and you have your own website as well,
Yes.
correct?
www.chooseican.ca. Yeah.
Nadia,
Yes.
did you know you just dared yourself to share?
Hey. I love it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Nadia, I am so thankful that you were here today and that you have been open and willing to share so freely. Your enthusiasm, it's definitely contagious, and your perspective is priceless, and your story is full of lessons and learnings. Tons of gratitude here for you. You brought your story forward, and you really are helping to break that silence. Thank you, Nadia.
Oh my goodness, I can't thank you enough for the opportunity, for what you're doing, the change that you're making. It was Salima, dust your shoulders off, pop your collar. Like what you're doing is beautiful. And, creating spaces for these conversations, again, like, for me, there's nothing more important than our mental health. And, you're creating
Right.
this platform, and you're doing such beautiful work. I want to,
Thank you.
give you praise where praise is due, that you've taken, those steps to be able to create this beautiful space for people. And I want to
Mhm.
say thank you. And you're so warm and welcoming. And, it's been such a pleasure being here with you and having this conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you for having me, for the work that you do. Yo, you're the ocean.
I'm the ocean. I love it. Thank you. Once again, Nadia, thank you for being a part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma.
Thank you so much.
To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.